Good evening and welcome to the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Cub Scout Pledge Pack 210 to come to the podium, and everyone could please rise, and they're going to lead us in the pledge.
To the podium, guys. They're good. Let's do what Doris says.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Scouts.
Good job. Next item on our agenda is reflection. I would like to call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next, we have approval of the minutes. Tonight we have two sets of minutes, the first being minutes from regular session on Monday, October 15th. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the minutes from the regular session of Monday, October 15th, 2018. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it carries 5-0. 4-0, I should say. Next, we have the minutes from the regular session on Monday, December 17th. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Next, we have presentations, and I would like to ask Councilmember Lorianne Sales to join me at the podium, and we invite Freddie Brown Sr., Ken Weiss, other members of the Multicultural Affairs Committee, and Dorothy Winder to join us. This, by the way, is for our African American History Month proclamation. Very nice to have you here. Dorothy, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm reading to give you a little fact on African American History Month. It was celebrated annually in the United States during the month of February. This celebration started in 1926 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who wanted to bring national attention to the important contribution of African Americans to the history of the United States. Dr. Woodson chose February because it included birthdays like Frederick Douglass, Langston Hughes, and Abraham Lincoln. The Multicultural Affairs Committee will be celebrating African American History Month with art exhibits by local artist Sandra Davis, and you must see that art exhibit. Ms. Davis' collage exhibit titled Strength, Beauty, and Sisterhood, running through March the 11th at the Activity Center of Board Park. An art reception was held on January the 24th, and Ms. Davis presented a fascinating talk about her art and the connection to African American History Month. Additionally, the city will host an event at the Community Museum on February the 10th titled The World War I Experience of African American Soldiers, and the presentation by Frederick A. Brown Sr. titled My Martin Luther King Story, Inspired to be an Inspiration at the Benjamin Gaither Center on February 26th. The city of Gaithersburg will be celebrating African American history as part of a diversity showcase held at Lake Forest Mall on May 11th. The event celebrates a variety of cultural through dance, music, fashion, and storytelling. Mr. Frederick A. Brown Sr. is here this evening to accept proclamation on behalf of African American community.
Right here is fine. Okay. I'm going to read the proclamation, and then Ken Weiss from our Multicultural Affairs Committee is going to introduce Mr. Brown. So, proclamation of the Mayor and City Council of Gaithersburg. Whereas the history of African Americans is unique and rich and has helped define what it means to be an American, and whereas African Americans have come to know the freedoms fought for in establishing the United States, gained through the application of our founding principles of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assembly, and due process of law. And whereas African Americans have worked collectively to remove systemic racism and discrimination that pervaded our laws and our public consciousness for decades, steadily making progress through the work of Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall, and others. And whereas African Americans have contributed greatly to the success of our nation in the areas of commerce, business, politics, education, medicine, and the arts. Now, therefore, I, Judd Ashman, by the power vested in me as Mayor of Gaithersburg, do hereby proclaim February 2019 as African American History Month in the city of Gaithersburg and encourage all government officials, educators, businesses, and residents of the city to honor, recognize, and celebrate the contributions of African Americans to the culture and well-being of our community. Proclaimed this 4th day of February 2019 and signed by me, and thank you so much for being here to receive this. Yeah, we're doing a quick picture. Okay.
You can look over here. Come on.
Just one more for me, please.
All right, Ken's going to come introduce you.
Thank you, sir. The interesting part of all the photographers is you have to know which camera is going to go off next so you can look at that one. It's interesting. I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Freddie A. Brown Sr. and his interesting introduction. Mr. Brown grew up on a farm in South Carolina. His parents boarded teachers in their home, and Freddie remembers these teachers talking about the importance of a college education. His parents and teachers inspired him to pursue one, which he did. He graduated from Allen University in Columbia, South Carolina, and then attended mortuary school in Atlanta, Georgia, while working at a funeral home during the evenings. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King's family home was not far from the funeral home, and someone tipped off Freddie's employer that Dr. King was looking for drivers, and Freddie had access to the ambulance and to the limousine of the funeral home, so he was perfect. He got hired. And his interactions with Dr. King and others in the civil rights movement were a formative experience in his life. Freddie continued his schooling, eventually began working at the National Institutes of Health as a research scientist. While there, he became aware of the NIH push to increase diversity among its research staff. He became a key figure in the NIH Minority Student Faculty Partnership by recruiting African American students from colleges and science teachers from the DC metropolitan area to attend graduate level research internships at NIH. In 2016, Freddie moved to Asbury Methodist Village and joined the Gaithersburg Beloved Community Initiative, which is a minority youth outreach program that's now well known and very successful. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Freddie A. Brown, Sr. If you want to take pictures, you may. Mr. Weiss, thank you very much for the kind introduction there.
You're welcome.
And I'll try to live up to it. I don't know who wrote it, but but it sounded good to me. And Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for this honor. I will take it with me and take it with me going forward. I meet a lot of folks and do a lot of things. And as was mentioned, I'm at Asbury
We're a lot old folks over there, but we're not dead. So thank you very much for that introduction and the citation of the proclamation. I would like to introduce tonight some friends, colleagues, and others who came out tonight to be with me, and I take credit for it. No snow on the ground. The beloved community, I'm very proud of them. Because of my background, I wanted to be someplace in my old days where I could carry on and enjoy some of the things that I was brought up doing. And the beloved community seems to be a real fit. I don't see the founder here, but I see his wife, stand-up wife. Yeah, Miss Jane, what's your last name, Jane? Harmon, Jane Harmon. We are very happy, and please tell your husband that. Now, what makes it so nice, because this organization itself was founded on a principle of Martin Luther King, and I'll do this from memory. And his philosophy, or his saying was, injustice any place is a threat to injustice everywhere. And it's incumbent upon those of us who live in this time to carry on those kinds of things. Now, Martin Luther King, a few days ago, he would have been 100. And we worked with Rosa Parks also, and she would be 106 years old right now. And while we are not quite that old, but it's incumbent upon us to carry on those things. Now, just let me mention a few things about the beloved community. I'm a member of about 4 different committees. One is the Courageous Conversation. We go out to the junior high. We have been over to the youth center on Jasper Street, and we talk to the youngsters and to try to encourage them some of the simple things in life. I think I see a gentleman right here from over there. Mm-hmm. So he'll go back and tell them all about me. And the next one, I work with STEM program with Gaithersburg High School and also Kennedy High School. Go over to try to encourage the youngsters to be the best that they could be, mainly because I still have a little connection at NIH, and I try to help them to get summer interns and try to help them to be the best that they really could be. And then the next one is the diversity group. And in this day and time, we try to talk about this world is big enough for all of us. So you just find your path and go on your way and let other people find their path. And this world will be a better place if we try not to take care of other people's business and take care of yours. And then the other thing is that when we say injustice, we talk about housing, we talk about health, we talk about equal pay, and those kinds of things that we try to instill upon our youngsters. Now, let me talk a little bit about how I became Martin Luther King driver. At the completion of my college days, I was running out of money. And I heard that it was a place in town, which was a funeral home that had 10 dead bodies, and they wanted somebody to watch the bodies, and I wanted a nice, quiet place to study, so it was a good match. I took the job. And the owner of the place, he liked my personality and how we got along. And so he said, I'd like to send you to embalming school in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the Atlanta College of Mortuary Science. And as was read here, it's only 3 or 4 blocks from where Auburn Avenue and where King was born and his father church, and he grew up. I said, I don't want to be an undertaker. He said, well, I have a big black limousine out there, and I'm going to give you that. I said, I'll take the job. On weekends, I would get in that car, and King had the beginning of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference right around that time, was pulling all those things together. And the reason why I'm so dressed up tonight is because that's the one thing we didn't give people an opportunity to say about us as we travel all over the South. We always look nice, including a hat. So we had a bus, we had a carload of preachers. And when we go to Alabama and Mississippi, the FBI and the local people who were in charge of putting you in jail, they thought that we were going to a funeral because we all had on all black suits. But we were going to small churches, and King, if you ever hear him, I know you have, will give a speech, and he would just turn the place upside down. And we enjoyed that. Now, I have a lot to talk about, but I'm not going to do it tonight, Mr. Mayor, because I'm going to be over at the Benjamin Center on the 26th. However, what we were fighting for at that particular time was voter registration. We were trying to instill upon people their civil rights. And we lucked out because Rosa Parks decided not to get up off of a bus. And so we joined up with the boycott. And so when we began to hit management in their pockets, they began to listen. And you know the story there, that we work hard and work and work and work. Mm-hmm. Now, my job was supposed to be to watch that car. I didn't get a chance, but every opportunity I got, I would listen to it. And then, because of my church background, it says that much is given to you, much is expected. So when I finished with Martin Luther King, I did this for 3 years, and then got my license in 4 years to be a mortician. Then I landed a job, as you heard, at NIH. When I got to NIH, I said, this is a chance for me to do something. You see, it's all right to listen to King and to do all those kinds of things, but it's incumbent upon you. Tell me, what have you done? And I'm going to tell you about that when we go over to the Benjamin Center, how many people I trained, what I'm doing there, and even what I'm doing right now. When you get this sort of thing and been exposed to it, you're no good unless you do something in your time. In your time. And as a result of it, I am so happy to be among y'all tonight. And I want my friends from Asbury to stand, please. I want the mayor to see this. Earlier he was talking about Lake Forest Mall. So you're going to be hearing from us some on that too. Because we are right across the street. And so I am not going to use a whole lot of time because they're limited time, because you got a lot of other things to do. But I'm going to say a poem for you. And I need to put on my hat in order to do this. How's that?
Sure.
Here's the poem. Okay. Listen closely, please. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. we shall overcome. Praise God Almighty, we shall overcome.
What an honor.
This is my daughter right here.
Mr. Brown, honor to have you here. I just feel like I can listen to you. Wait, let's just cancel the meeting. I just want to hear you talk. Okay. Next, we would like to recognize our Holiday Giving Coalition members. The City Gaithersburg Holiday Giving Coalition plays an important role in planning and carrying out this initiative from beginning to end. Volunteer coalition members contribute their talents and skills, coordinating and assembling teen and senior gift bags, collecting enough books, hats, and gloves to serve more than 1,300 children and their families during the holiday season. Their efforts begin in August when they meet regularly with our community services staff to coordinate all the details involved in 2 large community distributions, one at Thanksgiving and one in December, around holiday time. The 2018 coalition consisted of representatives from Career Catchers, Gaithersburg Help, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Grace United Methodist Church, Seroptimus International of Upper Montgomery County, St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church, Gaithersburg Youth Services and Student Union, and 2 longtime volunteers, Marilyn Opitz and Vicki Thomas. I'm gonna call everybody's name, and we have recognitions for everyone. But you know what? I'd like to have the community services staff up here. Oh, you're here. Well, Maureen too. Maureen's hiding back there. Thanks to a generous community that donated more than $25,000 to this effort, our many volunteers, and the hard work of the dedicated members of the coalition, the 2018 Holiday Giving Program was an enormous success. That's sort of the prepared materials. I just want to say, on behalf of the council, many of whom were there for at least one of the distribution events, we cannot thank you guys enough. There is need in our community, and it is so gratifying. It is so heartwarming to see the people in our community step up to make a difference, and like you guys did. So I'm going to read names, and we want you to come up and get your recognition. And I hope we got everybody on this list, but we'll see. Okay, we're going to start with Kay Kunda from Career Catchers, Marilyn Opitz, Vicki Thomas, Jake Hersom from the City Gaithersburg Youth Services, Maura Dinwiddie from the City Gaithersburg Youth Services, Julius Arnold from the City Gaithersburg Youth Services, Diane Schmid from Gaithersburg Help, Peggy Luther, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Joanne Hendon, Grace United Methodist Church, Robin Skinner, Grace United Methodist Church, Joanne Dretchen from Seroptimus International, Claudia Chitty from Seroptimus International, Janine Joyce from St. Rose of Lima, and Regina McCutcheon, St. Rose of Lima. And if there's anybody whose name I've left out, I hope not, but please join us up here. And before we get
the kids from Student Union.
Yes, Student Union. Yeah, come on up. And let's give, while they're coming up, let's give everybody a great round of applause.
Whatever, everyone else can move forward.
Thanks for being here.
To the back.
Thanks for your help.
Thank
you so much. You need to get right in front. Thank you. Okay. You're right on the side. All right. Big smiles, guys. guys did real good for the community. Let's show it in our smiles.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
All right. Thank you, guys. Again, if I can ask that everybody please have your conversations outside the room, because we are still, meeting is still going on. Thank you, Doris. Just let it clear out for a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
All right, everybody. Well, the next item on our agenda is public comments. This is the time when the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic that's not a public hearing topic. Tonight, we do have one public hearing. It is on affordable housing. So if you're here to speak on that topic, then just hold off. We're going to get to that next. In the meantime, if you'd like to speak, we ask that you state your name and either your address or your neighborhood. For the record, we ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. When your time's down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. When your time's up, it'll beep and turn red. And we would like to invite you to please go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Robert Janku. I live in Montgomery County portion of Wesley. The city amendments for cell towers should be split between the FCC requirements and what the tower companies have requested. The tower companies' requests do not relate directly to the recent FCC changes. A roundtable of all stakeholders should be set up to discuss the tower companies' requests. Tower companies are lobbying for above-ground boxes and above-ground towers, whereas existing provider Xfinity has underground transmission cables with above-ground boxes. Existing provider Fios has all underground cable and boxes. It would seem consistent with the existing policy that all companies have one or the other set of equipment underground. Are underground facilities all in the right-of-way? There may be more space in the actual right-of-way than you think. In my yard, outside the right-of-way, I have underground transformer, old phone lines, Fios cable, and boxes. Therefore, a precedent has been set for putting underground equipment outside the easement. Keep the current zoning that requires antennas to be tested every year. Gaithersburg should hire their own tester and pass the cost on to the tower company as a usage fee. Lawyer Mark Del Bean and Co. In summary of proposed FCC small cell tower order, comments that a city can pass on cost of part of the annual usage fee as part, the whole amount. Tax each gigabyte of data transmitted for electricity usage. Add a space requirement. Del Bianco comments that FCC considers spacing of towers as an aesthetic issue. No rules are given on spacing. AT&T demonstrated that their 5G technologies allow poles up to 4,000 feet apart. Project Loon flies their 4G LTE balloons 12 miles above the ground. Tower companies are arbitrarily limiting the distance of their 4G technologies. It may be advantageous to set the distance based on AT&T findings.
You still have 30 seconds.
Require tower applicants to provide pre-stamped notices for the city to send out. The city of Rancho Palos Verdes, California requires this. Lawyer Sue present in her document, Small Cell Facilities, Next Steps for Montgomery County comments that civil suits actually acts as taking action on the FCC requirements. By the way,
Your time's up.
Okay.
You're welcome to submit the balance of your comments
Okay.
in writing. Tonight, we are going to be voting about whether to close the record on this matter. But if you get us any further comments in writing shortly, I'm sure it'll be in time to be included in the record. Do we have any other speakers this evening? Under public comments? Okay. We'll move on to our public hearing. I will invite Tom Lonergan, our Economic Development Director, and Louise Kaufman, Housing and Community Development Chief, to lead us in our discussion on amendments to our affordable housing ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Louise Kaufman. I'm the City of Gaithersburg's Housing and Community Development Chief. My supervisor, Tom Lonergan, is with me tonight. So we have a public hearing on the city's proposed amendments to the affordable housing regulations. These regulations were introduced on January 7, 2019, and a legal notice posted on the city's website on January 11, 2019. Following the public hearing, staff recommends closing the public comment period at 5 p.m. on Friday, March 1st, with anticipated final action scheduled for Monday, March 18th. Tonight, there are 6 exhibits in the record, and we are asking you to conduct a public hearing and hold the record open until 5 p.m. on Friday, March 1st. Before beginning this presentation, it's useful to illustrate for you where our MPDU and workforce housing rental units are in the city. So although not required under our ordinance, the city does have 108 workforce housing units in the rental. These were through either a negotiation or some other requirement outside of our MPDU law. And we have 407 rental MPDUs, including, I added the new MPDUs, which will be part of a senior living facility at Washingtonia North. So that comprises our current stock of affordable rental housing. So we adopted our original ordinance in 2006, and we have amended the ordinance again in 2009. This will be the first amendment to the regulations since 2009. The regulations must, of course, reflect any amendments that were made to the ordinance. Those include expanding the requirement to include properties that convert to housing. Thus far, the ordinance has applied only to new developments or redevelopments with 20 or more units. We are extending the control period for rental units from 30 years to the life of the property as housing. And we are reflecting the new requirement established in the ordinance that housing for the elderly set aside 15% of the units as affordable. We must differentiate the pricing formula for the low-rise rental and high-rise rental units, reflecting additional cost of construction. And we are reducing the affordability in for-sale MPDUs from 70 to 65% of area median income. In addition, we are proposing amendments that will revise the pricing for the for-sale MPDUs and workforce housing units, establish rental pricing, a template for rental pricing for senior housing that includes services, allow for termination of the covenants at foreclosure, reduce the control period of for-sale units from 30 to 20 years, reflect the Mayor and Council approved Fee-in-Lieu within the Old Town Enterprise Zone, and exempt requirements in single-family detached units unless the entire development is comprised of that type. First, we're recommending that we revise the pricing for sale MPDUs. And our recommendation is to mirror the county and Rockville's pricing formula. That would mean that the pricing would be consistent throughout Montgomery County. It would expand affordability to a broader range of income-eligible households, 50 to 80% of AMI established under our ordinance. And the pricing would be substantially lower than our current formula, which right now would be, a new unit would be priced at $240,995 under our current formula based on this year's area median income. As an example, the county's MPDU pricing, under their formula, a 3-bedroom condominium would, the for sale price at initial would be $133,596. A 2-bedroom condo high-rise would be $211,579, and a 3-bedroom townhome $178,823. And I got these right off the county's MPDU program website. And currently, as I said, currently units are priced considerably higher than the county MPDU sales price. And given that median income for Gaithersburg residents is consistently about 20% lower than the incomes in Rockville and the county, it makes a lot of sense to reduce our MPDU pricing. In 2013, the city priced 3-bedroom townhome MPDUs for the same builder at both Summit Hall Reserve and, coincidentally, at Crown. The city units were priced at $236,000 for an MPDU. At the same time, I was trying to sell units at Crown for $151,000. As such, the Summit Hall Reserve units were extremely difficult to sell, whereas the units at Crown sold very quickly and to the council-designated priority populations. The staff is also recommending reducing the for-sale pricing for workforce housing units. We would recommend not, in this case, not using the county formula, but to modify our own formula, tweak our own formula, to reduce the pricing from what is currently 3 1/3 times household income at 90% of AMI to 2.5 times in a condominium and 3 times for a townhome unit. So our initial pricing also never differentiated between a unit type, so a condominium would be priced at the same as a townhome, as long as they were each the same number of bedrooms. This would fix that. So if we were to replace the pricing based on the staff recommendation, a 3-bedroom condominium would be priced at $250,500 and a townhome at $300,600. Because condominium fees, as you know, monthly fees can be extremely high, this is another way to offset that high condo fee. Just as a kind of a marker, the current American Community Survey median value in Gaithersburg for a house is $381,000. So we have proposed an entirely new section for rental housing for elderly. That's because it's a little more complicated when you take into consideration the services that go with assisted living and memory care. As you know, that can be extremely pricey. The staff is also recommending that skilled nursing care be exempt from these requirements. Skilled nursing care is generally short-term, often paid for by Medicare, and it doesn't really fall into a housing sort of stratum. So independent living, unless it includes meals, which we would require be offered at a discount, will conform to the city's existing MPDU rental formula. So here's an example of the pricing for housing plus services, and that's based on the 2018 area median income of $117,200. So establishing affordable pricing for assisted living and memory care was a challenge, particularly because our target population are households between 50 and 80% of area median income. And excuse my voice, I had a cold. So staff first created 3 tiers of affordability. Households between 50 and 60% of AMI, between 60 and 70%, and finally between 70 and 80% of AMI. Other than medical care and things like assistance with bathing, these unit types are generally all-inclusive. Utilities, meals, laundry, transportation, housekeeping. Therefore, staff determined that the residents can pay a greater share of their income to housing. For assisted living, that share would be 75% of a household's income at this, income strata. For a studio, 80% for a one bedroom in assisted living. Because these housing types are so expensive, often more than $5,000 a month, in assisted living, as long as the property meets the requirements for households at Tier 2 and Tier 3, they would not have to offer pricing at Tier 1. Similarly, in memory care, as long as they offered the housing could fulfill the requirement in Tier 3, they would not need to offer the units at Tiers 1 and Tier 2. Foreclosure, that's another issue that we struggled with. Currently, every MPDU and workforce housing unit ownership has a restrictive covenant, and that covenant includes language that the covenant shall not be terminated except upon the expiration of the control period. By doing so, it ensures that the units remain in the affordable housing inventory for the entire duration of the control period and does not release the restrictions upon foreclosure. However, if the unit is sold at a foreclosure sale, the city is proposing that the controls and the restrictions that are contained in the covenants would be terminated after the city receives the payment for its housing initiative fund. HUD and Fannie Mae both require that legal documents specifically state that all terms and restrictions automatically and permanently terminate upon foreclosure, deed in lieu, and deed in lieu of foreclosure. If the mayor and council agrees, then the restrictive covenants would be amended to include this language that releases the restrictions, and more importantly to the council, any foreclosed upon unit would be lost from the affordable housing inventory. Currently, we have 12 MPDU and workforce housing unit ownership in the city because our other units are under the county program, and the county program does contain that release language. So as long as this restrictive covenant is in place, a purchaser of a resale MPDU or workforce housing unit would not have access to FHA financing. And in many cases, the borrower could also not get conventional financing. It's important to repeat that if the covenants have been amended and any foreclosed unit would be lost to the inventory. And because we follow the county's MPDU program at Crown, those covenants are already contain that termination of restrictions language.
Could I ask a question on that? Because I wasn't quite following it.
Yeah.
It might actually be a Lynn question. So,
Okay. I'm always happy to punt to Lynn.
so is the mechanism judicial that we would recoup the cost of the judicial process, or do we become a later creditor, or how does that entire process work?
Yeah, I always say the foreclosure does go through the courts, and at the end there is a deed that is issued that does release the property from any and all liens. We would become a creditor, and again, depending on the amounts of the loan, we may recover all or a portion of what our costs are.
But the covenants would flow with the property, it wouldn't be releasable through foreclosure process. So we're giving up kind of a right to the land and becoming, I don't even know what tier creditor we become.
But in a foreclosure, the deed that is issued by the court, it is a court-ordered deed that it does release all liens and restrictions on the property.
Okay, so the covenants would be really, liens and other credit type instruments are one thing. Covenants that are tied to the land itself, I thought, would survive foreclosure.
Oftentimes, and again, it depends on the financing, as Louise said, with particular types of financing, it's a requirement of the financing itself, that type of covenant. And it wouldn't release other covenants that would typically run with the land.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're giving up the right to something to be in our inventory for the 30-year period, that we at least are mitigating the risk that we're not losing out on the value of the program by having that parcel leave the program due to foreclosure?
Well, any unit that went into foreclosure would leave the inventory. Because, right, Lynn, I mean, it wouldn't, a unit that went into foreclosure, those deed restrictions would then no longer exist.
Correct.
Yeah. But it's also important to note that I've had 200 plus units in my program, not just the MPDUs, obviously in the GALP programs, but we've had one foreclosure in more than 200 units. There's a very low foreclosure rate for this kind of program.
So our risk here of losing inventory is pretty low.
Right.
Which I think is actually...
And the gain is that so many people would then have access to FHA when they buy a unit. The next important change that we are offering would be to reduce the control period for the for sale MPDUs and workforce housing units from 30 years to 20 years, or whatever term the mayor council would think would be best. And, you know, we've really gone back and forth about this. I mean, you know, keeping the control period as is, which is an absolute 30-year control period, unlike Montgomery County and Rockville, where the units reset if a unit is sold within that 30-year control period. So if we don't change this, if we leave the 30-year control period, then obviously our inventory remains high. But in conversations with realtors, and often in Montgomery, our program doesn't really have a long enough history for me to make a strong recommendation that we reduce the control period. But talking to realtors and to the county staff, they agree that as units age, they get more and more difficult to sell. Often realtors have to come in to market and sell them, and then that adds to the sales price, the real estate commission. So the next slide, sort of what I did was, I went onto the county's MPDU webpage, and it's very extensive, and I sort of pulled out a number of MPDUs under both county program and then our own program, that shows you, where they were offered, when they were built, what the initial MPDU sales price was, what the resale price was, what the appreciation was, and what the comparable market unit sales is. And frankly, when I look at this, it's clear to me that at least within the first decade, these units still stay considerably below the market unit sales. At Crown, for example, we have an MPDU that was initially sold in 2014 for $156,000. It was resold in 2018 for $178,000, and the market unit price is $684,000. So, if you look at this, clearly, in the first 10 years, it remains a very affordable option, and not getting close enough to the market for us to have any concern. But I can't track the long-term affordability, and the county wasn't really helpful when we reached out to them. So, as I said, Montgomery County MPDUs have a 30-year control period that resets upon every sale. Workforce housing units have an absolute, in the county, an absolute 20-year control period with no resets. A 20-year control period helps the city maintain a better balance of appreciation for the seller and affordability for the buyer. But, again, our program is too new for me to really provide you with any reliable data. So we can have a conversation about this, or we can come back and revisit this, as time goes by. As I said, since this program went into effect, we've only had 12 for sale MPDU workforce housing units at Summit Hall Reserve, and I have been able to resell 3 of those. In 10 years, I don't know what's going to happen.
So what's the genesis of the recommendation then?
Because I'm around the county and I'm around the realtor community, and they have said to me, you're going to find this to be very difficult over time. You know, and when I went on the website of Montgomery County initially, and I saw it, and it was before I really could figure out what it was that the county website was trying to tell us, I thought that all these units were still for sale. That's what it looks like. Then when we sort of dig deeper, I realized that that's not the case. They just hold these units in that website, you know, forever. So it was in the regulations that I had updated, and then as I started to prepare for tonight's meeting, and as I said, we did more research, I didn't really feel comfortable making a strong recommendation to reduce it to 20 years.
Okay.
It seems premature at this point, given that we haven't even had the program for 10 years. What's our reset? Do we reset on
No,
sale?
we don't reset.
So we didn't include the reset.
No, there's no reset. It's 30 years. Yeah.
I think it's, yeah, I understand the reason for sharing it with us, but I don't see an urgency here. How many have you said we've resold? 3 units so far?
We've resold 3 at Summit Hall Reserve and 1 at Crown.
So 4 altogether.
Right. And there wasn't a large pool of applicants for the resale, especially in the workforce housing, but we were able to sell them pretty easily. It didn't take a lot of marketing, and we certainly did not need the seller to reach out to a realtor. We were able to do it with the seller.
Did you say?
Yeah, given the communities we have, where we have these, I would expect that they would probably be in great demand. So I wouldn't expect anything that was on the market to be available for very long. And I think that as long as we can retain those in the inventory, that's pretty important. So we can provide that opportunity to another family when that happens.
And again, I'm sorry.
I think we should revisit this at 10 years and then see what we've got. That's 40%, 30% turnover in 8 years, I guess.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I sort of put the cart before the horse, I think, on this issue, is that, those workforce housing units were sold in 2013, just as the market was barely starting to recover. And they were sold for $306,000. So yeah, they were harder, but we're proposing to reduce the prices, so it should be much more comparable to county pricing. A workforce housing unit under the county program, West Side at Shady Grove, sold for $412,000.
When were the Summit Hall Reserve resales?
I'm sorry?
The Summit Hall Reserve resales, you said?
We've had 3.
What time period was that?
Let's see, well, one of them, in the last 2 years.
And was it, in your estimation, easier to sell on resale than back at the initial sale? Because you had mentioned back in 2013 it was more difficult.
It was very, very hard. We actually had, as I said, we didn't have a lot of applicants, but we had a couple of applicants for each of the resale, and they were strong applicants. They qualified. They couldn't get FHA, so they had to qualify conventionally. So I feel like, in 5 years, hopefully they'll still be marketable and sellable. But as I said, so market, what did I say?
I guess the concern about whether these units are going to be marketable within Gaithersburg is one that I find difficult to.
Well, I just
think
based
everything
on
in
the
Gaithersburg is
pricing.
marketable,
Everything.
basically. So
That's true.
my home is 50 years old now, and
it's historic.
The second, it's historic. Yeah, I guess it's historic. Yeah, just by age, but
Shall we go to designation right now?
There's the plaque.
Can we do that?
Mike
Let's
Chestnut
get
slept here.
We're just the second owner, so.
Right.
Yeah, but the value of it is pretty.
Mike, we talked to you about a little of this.
Right.
We went back and did, as I said, did a little more thorough research. So I'm not pushing this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, even if we added a reset, I don't think that would change much.
Yeah.
I understand what real estate agents are concerned about, but I also understand why they're concerned about it, and it usually affects, it's the bottom line argument rather than whether or not something's saleable or is going to move well. I don't, things in Gaithersburg don't stay on the market very long in any part of the city for the most part. So.
Yeah,
Anyway.
2013 was definitely a hard time to be selling those units.
Well, go ahead. Let's
let's
finish the
finish, yeah.
presentation.
So, let's see, here we are, expanding the priority applications. Currently, priority is offered to full-time city employees, public safety workers, so that would be firefighters, first responders, anyone who has any jurisdiction in the city of Gaithersburg, and K through 12 public and private school employees in Montgomery County. Currently, they get priority both under our program and under the MPDU program at Crown. We're recommending that the pool be expanded a little bit to include military veterans and permanent part-time city employees.
I have a question about expanding the pool. I mean, there's no shortage of applicants for these units at present today, correct? So if we expand the pool, that'll make it that much more challenging for the people who are qualified to get into this program. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So why are we looking to expand the pool?
Well, we already offer it to permanent part-time city employees. That's sort of something the city manager agreed to. Military veterans, it seemed like an appropriate expansion.
What's the county's pool eligible?
The county doesn't.
They don't?
You just have to live or work in the county. I'll just keep going.
Yep.
So other administrative changes. So we amended it. We're proposing to amend the regulations to allow higher income buyers to purchase the unit if the units do not sell to income qualified households. That's just kind of hedging our bets. All of the controls would stay in place. So it would just, expand it to households above 80% for MPUs or 120% for workforce units. And the builder would have to come to the city and get approval, and they could only do it in 10% increments. That's the way the county does it. So also to add language that explicitly states that single-family detached units are required in developments where only single-family detached units are offered. The reason we have to put this in is because when we changed the ordinance, when we amended the ordinance in 2018, you remember that we did it that all the units have to be proportionate. So this, if you have an MPDU program, if you have a program with both single-family detached townhomes and condominiums, we're saying single-family detached units would not have to be sold as MPDUs or workforce housing units. To require the seller and the buyer to each pay 1/2 of closing costs at resale, and to limit the initial rental applications coming to the city for review and approval to a 45-day period. What happened at Camden was we had 55 MPDUs at Camden, and they staggered the lease up to the point where we were taking applications for months and months. So we just really want to limit the time in which city staff would take this and review those applications. Clarify responsibilities for reporting requirements by the property, and allow the city manager to choose a different economic index for pricing adjustments. So if we think CPI or AMI is too high, then the city manager could choose another index.
This first point about allow for higher income buyers when units do not sell to income qualified households, does that fall under the 45-day period, or is that?
No, that 45-day period is only for rental, not for ownership.
So what is the time period, or have we had to forego low income home buyers?
Right, that's a very good question.
So we have done that in the past?
I'm sorry?
Have we foregone the low income?
No,
Oh, okay.
But again, as I said, and Tony and Lynn, will remember this very well, how hard it was to sell the units at Summit Hall Reserve. It took a lot of effort. The owner kept coming to us, asking us to, allow them to sell it to higher income, allow them to increase the sales price, none of which we did. So this is just, as I said, a hedge. We don't really anticipate it happening. So other administrative changes are...
I'm sorry, so if you don't anticipate it happening, why would we include that? The whole point is to ensure affordable housing units get into the people that need it the most. And, if we have wait lists for low-income earners, wouldn't we just keep going through?
I think, for example, if you have a high-rise condominium product, and the units are priced at whatever our formula is, but the condo fees are $500 a month. We don't have any qualified buyers. Rather than the mayor and council, and the mayor and council could exempt that property and request a fee in lieu. On the other hand, you could allow the builder to sell it to higher income buyers, and the controls would remain in place. So that's an example.
So the problem at Summit Hall Reserve is that because of our pricing formula, those were higher than what would have been able to get at the county. If we change our pricing formula, then we're not going to have that situation again anyway, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, depending on market conditions, though. I mean, you never know.
And interest rates, if interest
rates. Because everybody wants to live here. So. Good market.
Okay. Well, but I'm talking about the financial and housing market, not the Gaithersburg market.
Right. Anyway, but I think changing the pricing formula would reduce the risk here.
Right. So. And again, it would be based on tiered 10%. So if a household at $100,000 a year, we can't find those, then we could go up to $110,000. And again, I believe, and I'm not sure, I can check the regulations, think that either the city manager or the city council would have to agree to that. I mean, staff obviously wouldn't make that decision.
Did you attempt to, and I don't know if you can do this, attempt to analyze the impact on market rate housing where you're reducing the workforce housing or the PDU pricing? Because the cost has to shift somewhere. It either shifts to the market rate housing and then gets eaten out of profits, or increases the housing prices to the extent the market can bear it.
And that's why we're recommending that we do what the county, follow the county in Rockville's, because the builders still build, they still sell. So it seemed like to have a consistent pricing formula for the entire county made a lot of sense to us.
I mean, was there any outreach to our local developers? Or
yes, we did meet. We did quite a bit of outreach, and Tom and I met with a builder who had no problem with going with the county's formula. I think, their only complaint was that the county requires a lot of paperwork, but otherwise they didn't have a problem with going with the county's formula.
As long as we keep the paperwork.
As long as I review the paperwork super fast. Get back to them very fast. And then I think this is pretty much the last, this is the last important slide. So the Mayor and Council approved a resolution 4018 last spring, I believe, May, that Tom and Sharon brought to the council. It would require a per unit payment that's equivalent to 5.25% of the relevant county impact fees. That would replace the $1 per unit fee that has been in effect since 2006, and again would apply to every residential unit in a project. So, for example, depending on if it's a multifamily high-rise or a townhome, staff estimates a per unit fee would range from between $1,500 to more than $2,000 per unit, depending on the unit type. So that seemed like a win-win, and the Mayor and Council approved that. So need to go into the regulations. So, I'm sorry?
I think you skipped a slide.
Oh, did I skip a slide?
The second change.
Administrative changes too. Oh, so let's see. Again, these are sort of not very significant ones, but things that we thought were important. So again, if you have 8.25 be the result, right now it would be offered 8 units. Under this change, it would be 9 units. I think the mayor and council and staff are in complete agreement that short-term rentals will not be allowed under our MPD program, and that was reinforced throughout the regulations. We also thought that removing a requirement that a seller, not the builder, but a seller, have to have a pre-listing appraisal. An appraisal was always required, so that was like an additional $500 charge on the seller. It didn't seem reasonable to us. We wanted to prohibit a one-person household from purchasing a 3-bedroom unit. That made sense to us. And this, in terms of a softening market, we thought that if we could ensure that MPDUs and workforce housing units, either leased or sold, could not exceed 80% of the lowest market rate unit. This would also apply to workforce housing unit rentals. Sometimes we find that our rental workforce housing units come close to the market rental price, why we didn't allow workforce housing unit rentals. So this is a way that we could forestall that. And clarifying the leasing staff responsibilities for accepting, review, and approving rental applications. We've had a lot of pushback from properties over the last 8 years, so I wanted to kind of tighten that. And then define the waiver provision for previous home ownership. So right now, an applicant who has owned a home within 5 years is prohibited from applying. The city manager can waive that requirement, and we wanted to sort of define under what circumstances. So the circumstances would be in case of a foreclosure or sale with no proceeds. So I think that's it.
So we wanted to talk about a resetting control period. In what context would we raise that? If this is a regulation?
I'm sorry.
It's a regulation.
It's a regulation, so it's very flexible. You can,
Okay.
doesn't have the same rules as ordinances do. Yeah.
In other words, the moment that you feel like you have a strong recommendation on this period, you can come to us and it's up to us. It's a regulation.
Right.
Okay.
The ordinance, just as a point of clarification, the ordinance determines the control period for the rental units. The regulations determine the control period for the ownership units. So when you amended the ordinance, you already extended the control period.
Did we come up with the fee for the $1 per unit in Old Town? I know that you were reworking a figure. Did we come up with a figure yet?
It's the formula that's referenced there. It's 5.25% of what the impact fees would have been applied to a particular unit.
Yeah, we approved that a while ago, right?
Yeah, you approved it in the summer, and it needed to be in our regulations.
Okay.
But for instance, right now, based on using a multifamily unit as an example, because the impact fees are different for the type of construction, we estimate it to be around $1,700 or $1,800 per unit.
Okay.
So this would apply to new projects, not to
existing
projects. Or
Right,
projects
it
that
would
already
go,
had approval, so.
Right, it would apply, the next project we believe that would apply is the Archstone project.
Well, for instance, if those ground floor spaces were to convert to some residential units, those units would have to pay the new fee.
And I had one more question about the short-term rentals, reinforcing prohibition against short-term rentals. Is that for owners or people renting?
Both.
So both. How would you do enforcement of
Well,
short-term rentals?
I can't really enforce it in the rental. I mean, the property, the lease determines that. Except that I guess I can enforce it in the rental, I'm sorry, because I do have them sign an MPDU addendum that sets forth what our requirements are. And in the home ownership, Currently, every owner has to send us a letter once a year. We send them a letter, and we say you need to certify and return this letter that you continue to own and occupy, and have not rented out any portion of your unit. You send it back to us. The reason we send it to them in case if they've moved, we'll be notified.
Now, does the county also do that? Because I know that, I think they're looking at their short-term rental policy, or is
For their
that-
MPDUs or in general?
For the MPDUs, yeah, because this is for the
Yeah,
MPDUs.
I
or
would
for
guess
some-
that the county's MPDU program prohibits both.
If they haven't
short-term-
prohibited it,
I think
they
they're
would.
working on it. They're working on the Airbnb.
There's no way they would let it go.
Or at least tax them.
Yeah, I know they want to tax it, but I don't know if they.
I mean, if we find out that a tenant is violating their lease, we would notify the landlord. Because we get copies of all their leases.
Okay.
Anyone else with questions before we go to the public? Not seeing any? Okay. This is time when the mayor and council like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to speak on this public hearing topic. Same rules apply. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Any testimony you have beyond that, you're welcome to submit in writing. It'll be considered just the same. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak this evening on this topic? Going once, going twice. Okay. Then we get to our recommendation here. Staff recommends the mayor and council hold the record open until 5 p.m. on Friday, March 1st. What is the pleasure of the council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. So again, anybody from the public, you're welcome. Our record is open until March 1st. Thank you guys very much.
And so then when I come back to you, I will have modified the regulations to keep the control period at 30 years.
Okay.
And that'll be the regulations
Yeah,
that you'll see on the 18th.
I mean, I didn't see any direction to change it at this point, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Next is from the mayor and city council. We're going to start with council member Sesma.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year in many ways. Actually, I think the Lunar New Year begins on Wednesday, I think. A number of us participated in the Chinese Culture and Community Service Center celebration at Lake Forest. The annual celebration was the 20-year anniversary of that celebration. So I want to congratulate the CCACC for 20 years of doing that in Gaithersburg. We were fortunate to have the First Lady of Maryland attend, at least at the beginning. The county executive, Mark Elrich, attended, and several members of the county council, including our own District 3 council member, Sidney Katz, was there as well. So a number of other dignitaries, and we had a couple of delegates and senators from throughout the state, including within Montgomery County. But nice celebration, and congratulations again on that. Before that, on the 21st, Martin Luther King Day observance, Junior Day observance, a number of us participated in the Day of Service that we co-sponsor with our with the Seneca Creek Community Church. And I want to thank all the volunteers and staff who came out, and I want to thank all the people who participated in the Day of Service. It was great. It's always a nice event, and it's nice to see so many people from all over the area, including Gaithersburg and the immediate surrounds, participating in that event. A lot of different stations to do stuff for people that are less fortunate, to provide some gifts and recognition to our first responders, and send note cards and knickknacks to service members overseas. So again, thanks to all who participated. And finally, we've had some cold weather recently. Tomorrow we're having a heat wave. It's going to be like spring in the 60s. But last week we were at sub-zero temperatures with the wind chill, single-digit temperatures. It's very dangerous when it's cold like that, and it was cold like that for like 3 days. Just a reminder to, if you're safe and warm, there might be some people that aren't in your neighborhood. They might be elderly people, neighbors. They might be people with young children. So keep an eye on those folks. Look out for them. Check in on them. And then if you see anybody, if you happen to be out and about, even when it's cold like that, and you do see somebody that seems to be in distress or needing shelter, please don't hesitate to call the city for assistance and refer that individual. You know, if you don't help them yourself, at least refer them to some assistance. So I want to thank all the people that have done that. You know, that's what makes our community strong, when we look out for each other. So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mike mentioned two great events. Kudos to the organizations for putting those on. It was great to attend. And kind of dovetailing what Mike just said, just want to say my thanks to our public safety folks. You know, the unusual weather that we had recently, I wasn't really tracking, and I was driving home, and the only reason I knew something was up is because I saw the pre-treatment on our roads. Not necessarily the state or the county roads, but as I pulled onto our roads and I saw the salt brine on there, I knew that something was happening. I knew that the city was prepared for it. So it's just that kind of proactive stance on. It turned out to be actually a few days of mist or late work because of the unusual weather conditions. And then, you know, the federal employees are back at work. It's a great thing. Hopefully it's something that does not repeat itself in the near future. Or ever, for that matter. But I'm just happy to see that our residents and those that we share our community with are no longer under that situation. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I also want to thank the CCACC for the great Lunar New Year celebration at Lake Forest. It's always a good time. This year my son came to join us, as well as some family friends, and we all really enjoyed it. I know Sam enjoyed feeding the lion, although it was a little difficult getting that in its mouth the first time. It was a little scary for him, but it was all good. It was really a fun event, and congratulations to the CCACC. They do great work, and they don't just throw a party once a year. They do really good work for their community. I want to thank the mayor for organizing a get-together with our counterparts in Rockville. We had not a formal meeting, but a casual get-together over some beers, just more of a way to kind of show them how we interact. We tend to be pretty social together, and the Rockville people have found it a little bit more of an uphill struggle to get there, but we had a really good event with, I think, all of the elected officials from Rockville at present, so I thought that was a great thing. Hopefully we'll do it again and keep the peace in both cities. We did not discuss a merger, but maybe that'll happen as we go forward.
We did threaten annexations, though, didn't we?
We did.
And I think we agreed that Rockersburg was the right final name if we go forward. But seriously, folks.
What is Gaithersburg?
Gaithersburg is not the right answer. I'm sorry, Mike. We had a breakfast, the annual economic development breakfast. I'm going to steal what Tom was about to say. No? Okay. Anyway, the county executive, Mark Elrich, was our guest this year, guest speaker at the breakfast. We had a really good attendance, a full house over at the Kentlands Mansion. Mark gave a wide-ranging talk, some of which was focused on economic development, some of which was focused on many other issues that he's dealing with at the county. So we thank Mark for his attendance, and look forward to many more discussions as we go forward. I was in attendance on Friday at a law firm called Denton's, which tells me they're the largest law firm in the world. They hold occasional seminars on smart cities. They held a panel discussion on 5G, which is obviously something that you've heard us discuss from time to time, and I think later tonight. One thing that came out, one of the speakers was a cybersecurity guy who's a retired major general from the Air Force. And actually, I need to understand why a lieutenant general is a higher rank than a major general. That doesn't seem to scan for me. But anyway, he and I had a nice conversation after the panel was over, and he shared with me some information that indicates that his belief from really being on the inside of 5G as it's going forward is that a lot of the equipment is much smaller than what we're being told and what is being reflected in some of the proposed regulations. So I've asked him to share with our staff people here and at the county whatever information they have, because if these boxes are much smaller and less obtrusive than we've been told, then life becomes much simpler around here, because we're spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we get good cell service, but also don't interfere with the peace and appearance of our neighborhood. So hopefully we'll get some more information there. I'm glad I went downtown for that event, aside from the fact that it was a nice lunch. Let's see, a couple of upcoming events. This Thursday morning, the Suburban Maryland Transportation Alliance, an advocacy group to improve transportation, is having a speaker from the state come and give us an update on the governor's proposed traffic relief plan, and give us the results of what's been studied so far, so that we know what to expect from the many potential options of expanding highway capacity and adding rapid transit along those lines as well, most likely. And there's some other stuff upcoming, but I'll talk about it after it's actually over rather than ahead of time, but thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Gloria.
Thank you, Mayor. So I will start with an update about our upcoming planning retreat for the mayor and council and a visioning exercise that will be taking place in the coming weeks. This is a notice to the general public. It's hereby given that in lieu of a review of the strategic directions at our annual planning retreat, the mayor and city council will participate in an all-day visioning exercise on Saturday, February 23rd from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. at the Benjamin Gaither Center, 80A Bureau Drive, Gaithersburg, Maryland. The exercise will look at future demographic and economic factors. With the help of a facilitator, the elected officials will explore the findings and determine if existing policies allow the city to achieve their goals or if changes are necessary. The session will not be televised. The retreat is open to the public, but public comment will not be taken during the session. For more information, including the agenda, please visit the city's website or contact the city's manager's office at 301-258-6310. And just a few comments about the past couple of weeks. First, I want to thank our junior mayor for coming this evening with his fellow scouts and helping us open the meeting up with a pledge. And I always enjoy seeing members of the beloved community, so I'm glad that they were able to come to our meeting tonight to recognize one of their own members. And I too attended the Rockville-Gaithersburg dinner, and it's always fun to break bread with our colleagues and not talk about business, so more opportunities for that, hopefully. I'm also a member of the MML Legislative Committee and Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments policy work group. So every week we are reviewing legislation that affects municipalities or affects the environment every week. And so staying on top of that and ensuring that we don't lose local authority or local control over where the small cells will go or how we are managing stormwater facilities here in the city. The annual Economic Development Breakfast, always a well-attended event with some of our other city committees. I think the Historic District Committee and the Old Town Advisory Committee joins us. I had to leave early because the Maryland Municipal League held their executive committee retreat. It was very interesting retreat. We discussed the polarizing political climate at the federal level, but at the end we were able to come together and see all the great things that we are able to do at the local level because we operate as a nonpartisan body. And so despite our personal biases, we can still get the job done and put our people over politics at the local level. We all received opioid training, and Mark Elrich was doing double duty because he had to leave the breakfast to come and talk to us. So I caught a few of his points. He's placing an equity lens on decision making at the county level. So it'll be interesting to see how the equity lens will affect decision making at the county level and what lessons we can learn here in the city. The 39th annual Women's Legislative Briefing happened this past weekend at the Universities of Shady Grove. It's in its 39th year, and they have an agenda that they set by the Commission for Women, the Montgomery County entity, sets a legislative agenda and advocates for issues affecting women. Currently, women are 52% of the county's population, so ensuring that the community remains a place where women are able to live and achieve and live safely is always important. The National League of Cities, we had our Board of Directors orientation. It's my first year serving on the Board of Directors, so we got a brief training to prepare us for the Legislative Advocacy Day that's coming up in March. A few of my colleagues will be joining me to talk with our federal representatives about issues affecting local cities, towns, and villages across the country. The biggest priority is infrastructure and ensuring that we have enough money to pay for the roads, the bridges, and water facilities, and also investing in the next generation of the workforce. I also want to thank Freddie Brown for coming to accept this month's proclamation for Black History Month. Thank you to the Multicultural Affairs Committee for recognizing Freddie's lifelong achievements. He mentioned something that reminded me of something that my mother has always told me: to whom much is given, much is required. And, you know, it was just in 2017 when I was elected as the first African American to the City Council. And so I'm constantly reminded about the enormous responsibility that comes with being the first and making sure I'm not the last. And just want to really see that the accomplishments and the history of Black residents, African Americans in the community are not just recognized during Black History Month, but seeing what can be done with, I guess, memorializing some of the historical significance of African Americans in the community. I know it's been done in Rockville, and Montgomery County has just put aside resources to put historical markers. They have a task force, so it will be interesting to see all of the diverse families that have contributed to the great city of Gaithersburg over the years and what their significance was. And lastly, since we weren't able to recognize it, February is also Heart Health Month. I'm really excited for next week's work session meeting where we'll be discussing whether or not there is a need for a health and wellness committee dedicated to promoting and improving health and wellness in our diverse city through community engagement, health promotion, and strategic partnerships. We will hear from the county's public health officer, Dr. Gales, and he will give a presentation about some of the health concerns affecting residents in our city. As always, it's helpful to hear from residents, so if you have any questions or concerns about any of the initiatives, please send your comments into the mayor and council at mayorandcouncil@gaithersburgmd.gov. And tomorrow's Opportunity Zone Workforce Tour that I'll be attending, and hopefully I can bring back some new things that we'll learn about opportunities within our work zone and neighboring opportunity zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. I won't repeat everything. I thank everybody for bringing up the events, and I appreciate. I was sorry to miss the CCACC Lunar New Year event, but we had a long-standing family lunch that day that I couldn't miss. Last week, I did attend the Maryland Mayors Association meeting in Annapolis. I wanted to commend our own Lynn Board for, along with our counterpart at Baltimore City, giving a fantastic presentation on small cell. We had a number of presentations that day, and I told Lynn immediately after, theirs was the best. They just did a great job on such a difficult topic. Last Saturday, I spent at the Activity Center with Britta Monaco and a number of great volunteers from our Art and Public Places Committee and staff, sort of culling down the number of artists who've submitted applications to be part of the new Y-Site project, where we're going to put some sort of public art ultimately on that brick wall that faces Old Town next to the railroad tracks that you see when you're coming toward Old Town on Russell Avenue. And it could be mural, could be lights, could be sculpture, could be combinations of projected stuff, could be any number of things. But we were so excited by the level of artists that have expressed interest in this project. It's a real cause for optimism. As Lorianne mentioned, next week we have our work session where we'll receive a presentation on health outcomes from a county study that was done, specifically the outcomes that came out of the city of Gaithersburg. So that's Monday, February 11th, 7:30 p.m. The next regular meeting we have here will be Tuesday, February 19th, 2019, and it's on a Tuesday, which is unusual, but that's because it's Monday's President's Day. So 7:30 p.m., February 19th, Tuesday. Next regular meeting we'll move on to from the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one item, unfortunately one that could result in some confusion and some inconvenience. What's been happening, as reported by our recycling contractor who I've brought up before, is that the operators of the recycling facility from Montgomery County have actually started rejecting loads that have materials that are not allowed to be placed in bins, notably bundles of plastic bags or recyclables in plastic bags. Our contractor actually had 2 truckloads rejected and had to be taken to the landfill. We are going to be meeting with internally on just how to spread the word on this, and then meeting with the contractor themselves. But it's possible that for the short term, mixed loads that have objectionable materials in them will be left curbside or be tagged with an explanatory note saying this is why we did not pick up your recycling, while we move forward with just how to spread the word on this. We're going to have PIO involved and legal, and we'll be meeting with the contractor. But that's happening now. That's a material increase in the scrutiny of the staff at the recycling center to actually inspect truckloads now. But it's just become such a widespread problem that they felt like that's what they needed to do.
Do we do single stream?
We do.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to separate it, I thought.
But objection.
We don't, but people are putting things like, it's commonly believed that you could put a big load of grocery bags. They're not recyclable, and they're actually supposed to be put in the trash. And other things, people are just putting trash in there, and it's impossible to go load by load and separate it out. And I think people just presume that stuff that doesn't get recycled just somehow disappears in the stream, but it doesn't. And you have entire truckloads of recyclables, of which I imagine 95% are recyclable, being taken to the landfill.
Well, even the plastic bag's not recyclable.
Even the plastic bag, that is correct. But it is an uptick in what the management of the recycling center has been doing to actually reject loads or threaten fines.
So they're also rejecting loads that are tied up in plastic then, right? Basically tied up in plastic bags. That's probably the bigger issue. I think it's unfortunate because, by sending these loads away, then they just go to landfill, and the landfill is reaches capacity earlier as well. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having a recycling program anyway, to reduce what goes into the
and
sanitary
recycling is under such difficult circumstances, given the devaluation of glass, really just metal and plastic is what they want. And paper is really hard to sell these days. I think you're going to see, it's one of the reasons why we're sending Michael Johnson to the classes that he's going to be taking in New Jersey, that this is headed somewhere else than where we currently are, and we need to try to be ahead of that curve.
Wait, let me get this straight. He's going to New Jersey to learn about trash.
About recycling.
Joke there. Lauder gets not listening.
That's it.
That's it, okay. We're going to move on to economic development update. Tom Lonergan, the aforementioned, who did not hear his name just mentioned.
I apologize.
Rob Wu, I think, has some correspondence for you.
Oh, okay. Well, very quickly, I did want to mention that, one, I was actually just talking with Maureen, referenced the passing of Basil Waters from Waters Appliance. I don't know if anyone knew, but he passed away over the weekend. So Maureen and I were just catching up, but I apologize. So we're sorry to hear that.
Yes, indeed.
Longstanding member of our business community. But I did want to mention that, going back to our opportunity zones, as you know, it's a nationwide initiative administered by the Treasury, created in 2017 under the new tax law. It provides all sorts of federal tax incentives for investments in distressed communities over the next 10 years. Areas designated opportunity zones are able to reap the benefits of capital gains to help redevelop underserved communities. We have 3 of our census tracts designated as opportunity zones. Those include Old Town, Lake Forest Mall, and several areas along Frederick Avenue. Highlighting these zones and better explaining the benefits that come along with them is one of my division's priorities this year. It's nice to be getting some very meaningful help along those lines from our partners at the state. We and other municipalities and counties had requested from the state that they create a website that really highlights not only a broad level perspective of what the program is, but very specifically the opportunity zones in the state of Maryland and very specific projects that are available within the state of Maryland. Financing that might be available, kind of a one-stop shop for that, and it's done. The Maryland Opportunity Zone, Chris, maybe if you want to bring that up very quickly, Exchange is the first comprehensive interactive resource of its kind in the nation. The Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development recently launched this. The site will serve as a virtual meeting place for investors, fund managers, property developers, newer expanding businesses, and local stakeholders. It does provide the latest Opportunity Zone news and investment activity, a locator for projects and businesses. There are several here in Gaithersburg that are already listed on there as potential opportunities, and information on financial and other incentives available at the state, county, and municipal level. You can go to this website to find out what's happening. So check it out. It's easier to read than say, but it's pretty helpful. We're pretty impressed with what the state's done with this. So a good start. And Councilmember Sales, thank you for mentioning tomorrow's. I just want to mention that Sharon and I will be participating in the Opportunity Zone workshop. I look forward to seeing you there at the AFI Theater in Silver Spring beginning at 9 o'clock. Together with our partners at the county, it's an all-day event with panels and presentations. Sharon and I will be leading a guided tour in a bus of the opportunity zones here in the city. I think we've been asked to do Montgomery villages as well, so we'll wing it. Invitations were extended to a lot of targeted groups, including the development and investment communities. Judging by the response, we should be in good shape. It is sold out. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to staff guidance. I will invite Ann Bird up to the podium or the table. I see we have Maureen Herndon coming up here too.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Herndon, Division Manager of Community Services here with the City of Gaithersburg. I'm also staff liaison to the Community Advisory Committee. I just want to take a minute to thank them for all their hard work, monthly reviewing grants and specifically these opportunity grants. And
we join you in your thanks.
Very much appreciated. And Ann is the chair that will present 2 recommendations to you tonight for your consideration and possible vote for funding.
Welcome.
Glad to be here. In the FY19 budget, up to $10,000 is authorized for grants to nonprofit organizations for programs and services that are new, innovative, or address emerging needs or special opportunities for City of Gaithersburg residents. No funds have been expended in this fiscal year. The period for grant applications is now closed. The Community Advisory Committee is presenting 2 FY19 opportunity grant recommendations for your consideration. $2,600 is being recommended to support Know Your Rights clinics conducted by the paralegal staff of Maryland Justice for Our Neighbors. While the organization's legal clinic is temporarily closed due to backlog, these clinics would help the city's immigration population understand their constitutional rights, what steps to take to protect themselves in the event of contact with ICE, how to prepare for separation should a family be placed in removal proceedings, and other legal matters. 2 clinics, each serving approximately 100 participants, would be conducted at Epsworth United Methodist Church this spring. An award of $800 is recommended to support a request from Imagination Library to allow for up to 50 children to each receive a book a month from birth to age 5. The initial focus will be the younger siblings of Gaithersburg Elementary School students. The National Dolly Parton Imagination Library provides the new books each month. The local Imagination Library, which we would be supporting, is an all-volunteer organization that mails the books and provides administrative oversight.
Thank you very much, Ann. I remember meeting the people who run Imagination Library and hearing this idea, and it sounds really intriguing, and I'm glad that the Community Advisory Committee jumped on that and is making this recommendation. I'm also, I just want to caveat the first one about the Know Your Rights clinics. We do, presumably we have some immigrant population within the city of Gaithersburg for whom this would be relevant. And I think that for anybody in the community to know their rights, to understand legally what's entitled to them, is a good thing. I just want to make sure that the Community Advisory Committee vetted this and that it is exclusively on the Know Your Right side, and there's at no part of it is sort of instructing people how they might skirt the law or get around things. I want it to be strictly, I would not feel comfortable unless our tax dollars are being invested strictly on, the legal side of this. So how comfortable, Ann, are you on behalf of the committee that is what this would be going to?
I'm comfortable with it. I believe that that's all they're going to do. Normally they have a lawyer who runs these clinics to help people with their problems. And the reason that they are doing the clinics is that there's such a backlog for the lawyer's service. They can't possibly take on anything new. So they have devised this program so that people can know their rights. And that's all this is, to educate the immigrants as to what their rights are and what they can do in those situations. But I certainly understand your concern. I would feel the same way.
Yeah.
I do feel the same way.
So just to add, sorry.
I'm sorry, go on, please.
No, just to add from the staff perspective, before the application was given over, we, just like all our grants, we run it through the Maryland tax thing to make sure legitimate nonprofits. We did research on the website and talked to a couple other places that have hosted these events. And just yesterday, I asked her for the agenda of the event. So I said, in case it is approved tonight, I just want to let you know that we want to see the agenda before we actually write the check, since we're not familiar. But I feel very confident that it's fine, and just pure, helpful, and factual. But we have that extra part that we will be looking at the agenda of each event.
Thank you.
So, and she was fine with that.
It's kind of about the agenda that I was just going to ask. Is do we know the personnel and resources? Because if you have 2 clinics I'm assuming you divide the cost by 2, that's $1,300 a clinic. That's kind of a hefty check for, you know, one speaker to go up there and talk to people. So I assume there's something else involved, maybe multiple people who are sitting down with folks to have one-on-one or groups kind of.
Well, I think
And the
it's the
budget
fee
should
for the paralegal and
Okay.
copies. The biggest expenses I recall was the cost of the paralegal, and the attorney also apparently will be vetting this as well. He'll be working, although I don't think he'll be there, but I think he'll, you know, oversee what the clinic says.
Oh, they're not volunteering their time for this?
I'm sorry?
No.
Oh, okay,
Not for these two.
okay. And
Ones
how
that
are
they're
they
gonna-
advertising? Is it just for Epworth's members, or how are they advertising the clinics?
So we'll be working with them on that too, because we always advertise, you know, what we're supporting. So
Okay.
it'll go through all our networks, and especially
not
in
included.
conjunction with the Spanish Catholic Center
Mhm.
and their immigration
Okay.
program, so we'll get it out through all our nonprofits.
And I'm
there's
sure they'll
schools.
use the same resources that they do for the clinic, the sessions that they normally have with the lawyer. They'll use that. They talked about outreach as well. I
So is
can't
this a
remember
grant?
the specifics.
Is this a grant for Maryland Justice for Our Neighbors staff to put on something, or are they hiring or retaining outside attorneys and paralegals to come in and teach the classes?
No, my understanding.
Because we know how much, you know, outside attorneys cost, right? We're
No,
expensive.
from what I understand, these are the attorneys and legal assistants that are working with them.
On
I don't
staff.
know if that's all that they do is work for this group.
Okay.
Because this is kind of like an arm of the Methodist Church, like it's a nonprofit that's tied to that.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it at Epworth. So I was picturing the attorney and the legal assistant having like a regular day job, but also working for
Yeah.
them as part, but I can double check.
I mean, so let me just end it with this, is I'm fine with the subject matter. I'm kind of concerned when I see 2 sessions for $2,600, and I would
It
just want
is
to make
kind
sure.
of pricey for 2 sessions,
Yeah,
you're right.
there's
But, you know, that all depends on the resources involved. I mean, if this is a detailed session where you have multiple people sitting down to make sure that, you know, checking things like that, then yeah, it could be worth the expenditure. And, you know, again, I'm fine with the subject matter, but.
They have a lot of printing costs.
Well,
Yeah,
they have a
so
lot of-
I'm
Those are
looking at
questions.
the-
So
I
we
was-
can,
Yeah, I
I
was just
mean-
looking at the website, there's a lot of materials that they bring with them.
Right, and they put in $1,000 for printing and copying.
But yeah, if you're comfortable with it after looking, as you said you were going to, then
I'm gonna check the agenda.
those are just my
So-
concerns.
2,300?
2,600.
2,600 and
26.
$1,000 is for materials for 2 sessions.
For 2 sessions, 500 a session.
So 1,600, 800 per session for the staff that are involved.
Yeah, 1,000
Who
for
are
the
probably
paralegal.
employed by the National Immigration Legal Center, I think. Yeah.
Says 1,000.
No, I agree with the concerns, but you know, sometimes you get what you pay for, and if you don't have a professional, if you don't actually hire the professional that's an expert in the area, then we can't be very confident in what
Mhm.
our residents are getting out of this, what the people that need this information are actually getting, so. But I share the concerns. I guess I don't find this to be an exorbitant amount for this purpose, considering I imagine a very large group of people from the community that will benefit from this.
Lorianne, were you done? Because you were sort of asking questions and it sort of got.
No, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's a good purpose. It's not, the cost isn't too much, but I would like to, I don't know if we can have maybe if they'll have surveys from the participants to make
Mhm.
sure that this was, you know, a good use of the resources and their time, and it was helpful.
They put that in their application because we asked for that. They said the only
Okay.
limitation would be, obviously, if somebody doesn't want to fill out a survey, but
Okay.
they said they do their best or put
Good.
no name required.
Yeah,
or-
exactly. Yeah, that would be helpful afterwards.
Mhm.
Paul, are we going to have any staff observing?
Are we going to have?
Any staff observing?
We're going.
Oh.
Okay, well then,
At least to one
I'm
of
even
them. I
more
don't know if I'll go
comfortable.
to both, but-
Well, I mean, if you go to at least one, I think
Oh, yeah,
I'm
but I want to see the
comfortable
agenda
in.
before they, yeah.
Yeah, that makes me more comfortable about
Yeah.
this as
Well, I did
well.
have a
So
question
we're
about
finding
books.
out what this is about. I think it's
Mhm.
important for our staff to have this
Mhm.
knowledge and background as well.
Yeah, to understand a little bit more, because we
Yeah.
never really,
Mhm.
Lorianne has a question about the Imagination Library.
Wasn't there a group with the Education Enrichment Committee that did the book a month? Or is this different from?
the Education Enrichment Committee learned of this group.
Okay.
And they were actually at Holiday Giving and signed up like 25 kids with the remainder of the money that they had
Oh, okay.
during Holiday Giving.
Oh, good.
So it is an overlap a little
Okay.
bit in topic and focus, the literacy of young kids. But, I mean, I think that's good, actually,
Yeah.
because.
We like
we're looking
literacy
at-
around here.
And we
Do
like
we now?
literacy throughout all committees, so.
Very good. No, that's a really
There's so
good
many
use of
good
the
things that
resource.
come
I
from
know,
that.
$800 for how
I
many? Is
know.
this for 1 year or?
Lifetime.
No, that signs them up.
This is only 6 months. They have to spend all the money
Wow.
by the end of this fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
Right, but it enrolls the kids from 0 to 5.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So they puts 50 kids into the pipeline that they're set.
Yeah.
Nice.
At
And so what
least
they're
until they
at-
go to kindergarten with the books.
So the cost is $16 per child,
Okay.
which to me is very inexpensive. And they guarantee that once a child is in there, they go all the way through to school with the books.
Nice.
And so they don't pay for the books because Dolly Parton does, but they do have to pay for the mailing of the books and if
Okay.
books come back and blah, blah, blah. So they have the administrative costs. So to me, $16 per student is pretty inexpensive.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
To me, it's a
It's
really
what the cost
special
of one book.
opportunity.
Well,
Really, it's the cost of one
Cost of
kid's
book,
picture book.
But it's postage over 6 months, and
Yeah.
basically,
Right.
I'm not.
And
Well,
they-
I mean, it's
postage
longer than
over
6
years.
months,
Yeah.
actually. They have to
Birth to
enroll
age
it by
5.
the end
Well,
of
this-
June, but they're gonna, like, if they enrolled in a 3-year-old, they're gonna get it for 2 years.
This
So
doesn't
it's-
give them the
it's like
books
a
just,
no-
right.
So it's really exciting. The whole,
I'm a
Dolly
fan of
Parton
Dolly's
set up.
anyway, so I think.
Well, someone wanna move this? We need a resolution here, right?
We need a
Lynn,
resolution.
you gonna vote?
Mayor, I'd like to move the opportunity grant recommendations for the Know Your Rights Clinic and the Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please thank your colleagues on the committee.
Yes,
Thank
We
you.
will. Thank you.
Okay, next, Dennis Henslinger, here with a simple request for us to close the record on small cell, right?
Yep, Mayor and City Council, I'm here to request the close of the record on the amendments to the regulations for the installation in rights-of-way located within the corporate boundaries of the city, commonly known as the right-of-way regulations. During the public hearing, council asked us to look at several issues, including radio frequency emissions and undergrounding of equipment. We reached out to our outside counsel, Joe Van Eaton, and also to the industry, Crown Castle, AT&T, and Verizon, and we've provided you with a memo that kind of summarizes the stuff from the outside counsel, along with the responses back from the 3 industry leaders at this point. So we're requesting that you close the public record on Monday, February 11th at 5 p.m.
Okay, so that is a week from today. Does any comments, or does someone want to move
Well,
the closing?
Given the email that I sent you folks after the conversation at the 5G meeting on Friday, I'm wondering if, I think that information is very relevant to this discussion and making a decision. Do you think we'll, I mean, there's no way to know if we'll have a response back from them within the next week.
I have reached out to them
I
already
saw.
today, so I'll just have to know whether it's...
Yeah, I'm not sure it was General Wheeler that had the detailed information. He was a colleague of his that he wanted to connect us with, so hopefully he's not on vacation in Borneo or something.
This would still allow us to bring it back, the regulations and the franchise and a master license agreement in March. So we're trying to still meet that deadline.
Okay.
So are you asking for the record to remain open, or what's?
No, you're asking the record to be closed, right?
No, I'm hoping that we can get more, this additional information into the record, because it seemed like very different than what we've been hearing from the industry.
I'm hoping so too, but given the environment with the FCC and their regulations bearing down on us, I think we need to make sure we stay ahead of it.
Well, I thought the cover sheet was that the staff would take this new information, this additional information into consideration before they brought us the final.
Yes, we will be
So-
looking at all the information that comes in by February 11th and
so-
making recommendations to changes from what was originally presented at the public hearing.
Okay, so I assume it would include the information from the general that.
Even if it comes in later,
Yeah, if it comes in.
it's still, we're still dealing with regulations.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
could,
we could do this anytime, since it's regulation, but I think we want to try and capture as many things as we can at this one point in terms of amendments to our regulation. So
Look,
that-
you've gathered a lot of information.
So
It's
There's quite a bit of information here.
So
Yeah, so,
I'm good with closing the record, as long as it's not forever, since there will always be more information on this subject, right?
yes.
I'll
Yes.
second.
Could even stipulate, this is not closing the record forever.
Just for
Okay.
this one public hearing.
Yes, okay, so we have motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. From the city attorney,
I have nothing further this evening.
from any other staff? Not seeing anything from anyone else. Okay, again, join us next week, February 11th, for our work session to receive a presentation on the health outcomes in the city of Gaithersburg from a Montgomery County study. The next regular meeting of the mayor and council will be conducted on Tuesday, February 19th, due to President's Day being on Monday, 7:30 p.m. here at City Hall. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.